We are live. Okay, cool. Man, thank you for joining me, guys. If you don't know already who I am, my name is Brother Greg, aka the Real Gilo. I'm really excited. But before we get into the guests, I wanted to just real quickly uh, pay the bills, if you will. Today's episode is brought to you by Archon Mounts. So I actually did a giveaway a couple of episodes ago. But if you need some mounting solutions, tripods, whatever type of devices you've got, whether it's an iPhone, Android, if you're a professional photographer, they've got all the mounting solutions that you would need at archon.com. I'm going to be quiet and just stop talking about that. But if you want to buy products, go to archon.com, promo code Hawaii, and you get 20% off your entire order. So that's that. Man, I'm so excited. I got someone that I've been reaching out for a little bit. I saw her in a podcast on YouTube, and this is the first time in a long time that I've had an international guest. So I'm really excited to have her here. And I will tell you this, if you're watching me on all live stream platforms, we are live on YouTube, Twitch, X or Twitter, Instagram, I believe, Kick, and what's the other one? There's another one. I'll remember later. But we're live on all platforms, and we're going to be uploading audio on Spotify as well. So I just want to say thank you guys for hanging out. Be sure to repost this, reshare this as well. And my guest, her name is Karolina. She is from Poland. And I'm just excited to have her. Her story that really got my attention was she had experienced a ton of health issues in her life. And there was a radical change in her life where she changed primarily her diet. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the struggles that she had recently and even throughout her lifetime, but also the victories that she's experiencing even today. So, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest will be meeting her in about 40 seconds. Her name is Karolina. Stay tuned. Okay, it works. It's good to see you.
Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't met Karolina, that's her. It's such an honor and a pleasure. I think we reached out a few months ago. I think during Christmas time.
Yes, we did. That was right after I was released from the hospital. Yeah.
I'm gonna pop up now. Your Instagram is public, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna show some pictures. I didn't tell you this, but since it's public, I think maybe you can walk us through. Is this the recent one?
So this is from September.
September.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And don't worry, there's some victory in here. So yeah. This is her with the big smile. And now this is in Poland, correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah. And I'm just going to run through these and we'll talk story for a minute. But I love this photo because I'm from Hawaii.
Okay.
And that looks like lava to me. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's inside of a volcano.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then this one, same area?
Yeah, Lanzarote as well. It's in Canary Islands.
Now, where is that in relation? How far away is that from where you're from?
Around 6 hours by plane. So that's next to Africa. I'm in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm showing this beautiful scenery just because I think it's a testament. Now, how do I say that? How do you say that? Lanzarote?
Lanzarote, it's Spanish.
Spanish, okay. Well, I wanted to start off with that. And I would just say this, Karolina, thank you again. Like I said before we went live, I'm really honored and I'm blessed to have you here. Mm-hmm. Just your story.
Yeah. Thank you as well. Well, Thank you for considering me interesting enough to actually invite me on a podcast.
Well, I'll say this. In Hawaii, we say, aloha mai kauko. But here I always, like, how are you doing? And then also eko mai, which is welcome in. Would you mind greeting our viewers in your language?
Okay, dzień dobry wszystkim. Witam.
That is so. I was telling Karolina, for those that don't know, I was watching YouTube videos. I'm like, how can I tell her hello or greet? And I totally got it all. I butchered it. So, but well, let's get right into it. Your story, from what I caught into, is that you had some severe chronic illnesses. There's a whole bunch I wrote down. I mean, we can cover it later, but CRS, the migraines. When did all these health issues start for you?
So it all began when I was a child. So, well, it's difficult to tell. It's complex to tell this story because right now, even now, I am getting some additional informations that kind of make clear what was going on when I was a child and make me pay attention to symptoms that I was ignoring before. So actually, this week, I found out that I already had anemia when I was a newborn, when I was 3 or 4 months old, and I didn't know prior to like the day before yesterday. But I would say the health issues that were palpable to me that I remember started when I was 7, and it started with stomach aches. And the doctors couldn't point to the reason for those stomach aches. They suddenly stopped when I was 8, and then my migraines started. And then I had episodic migraines, meaning like once a week, until I was around 20 something. They were going sometimes, better, sometimes worse. Overall, I managed to put them into, let's say, something approximating a remission when I was 21 with diet. So that was a low carb diet at that point. I was eating all of the meat and vegetables and basically just sticking to low carb. As long as I was low carb, it was okay. And then I was prescribed the contraceptive pill when I was 22. And this is when all the problems began. And this is when I started getting 30 migraines a month, and I couldn't put a halt to it.
So the contraceptive, I mean, my wife has had that, and sometimes the doctors, their thought process is noble, but it's already right off the bat, already coming with side effects.
Yeah.
Right. So 30 migraines a day, and then when you talk about 30 migraines a day, how long does it last? And we talking about 30, bro. Like seriously, how long does each migraine last throughout a day?
I mean, it was not ending. Let's just say it was never ending.
And how old were you? 20? You said 21-ish?
Yeah.
And if it was so bad, what made you keep going at that point?
To be honest, I did experience pain throughout my life. So it wasn't something new. It was just something that was more intense. And I just, it never occurred to me that it wasn't going to go away. I just thought, maybe it's just like a worse period. I need to figure it out. And so, I looked for solutions. I mean, I looked for solutions probably since I was 14. So that wasn't new.
Can we pause on the teenager? So with all those issues at such a young age, I mean, he's starting from way below 10 years old. And how was that for you socially? Like, were you awkward or were you like the top of the class? How did that affect you just in that formative years?
I don't think it did. I think when the problems start so early, don't know anything else. So it wasn't weird for me. I think it occurred to me when I was over 20 that it's weird to be in pain all the time. That's when it occurred to me that people typically are not in pain all the time. So I never really complained, I would say. I never thought it was weird or unusual. I just thought, this is how life is. It never questioned it.
You know what's funny you say that? So my oldest son, we had to give him the EpiPen, I think 5 times. So that's the pen that basically saves his life. He was allergic to so if you go into the grocery store, he was allergic to everything that was in the middle of the grocery store, which is basically processed foods.
Yeah.
Peanuts, obviously peanuts, all that, anything, wheat, eggs, dairy. And it's similar to you. Like he never really thought of it as any, that was his life, even though we almost lost him, I think, twice because of those things. And now that he's getting older, he's starting to realize, wait a minute, I don't have the same
Yeah.
privileges or things that you guys have. And he's starting to be a little bit more risk taking with eating foods that he probably shouldn't be eating. And I think when we get older, there's a little bit of that reasoning maturity part of our brain that maybe now we're starting to analyze, wait a minute, I can't do this or that, or why is this, and my friends don't have that. So at that age, 21 or 22, at 30 migraines, what happened from that chapter in your life?
Mhm. So I lost, well, my trust in doctors was a bit damaged when I was 18. Because when I was 18, they gave me a prescription drug, which is overall used for epilepsy, but it can be used for migraines as well. So I was prescribed that. I was told that I should take it because, I don't know, I was just given it by the doctor. I didn't really question it. And I started taking it. And after I started taking it, I developed severe depression to the point where I was suicidal. And I never connected it with the drug. So I didn't know what was going on, but the drug didn't work for migraines. It didn't do anything. So I stopped taking it. And a week after I stopped taking it, my depression suddenly went away. And that's how I realized I think it was the drugs, and I had no idea drugs could actually do it. So after that experience, I became a little hesitant, towards trusting the medical system, and I tried to stay away from it. But when I had 30 migraines a month, it was, when I had to come back to the medical system because I didn't know and I didn't see any other solutions. So I started going to doctors again, started asking them for treatment, started being prescribed treatment as well, and none of it was working. So that was happening when I was 22 until around 23, 24.
So you remember I asked you in your earlier formative years, or even when you started getting those migraines prior to medication,
Yeah.
like what kept you going? You said, well, I've always had adversity, right? I've always dealt with something.
Yeah.
And it's so ironic that the minute you take a pharmaceutical, and I'm not against doctors because I have family that are doctors, but I think the Western mindset and the corporate aspect of it is I don't like, right? I don't like the business side of it. And we can go down a deep hole on that too. But it's ironic, right, that now you're having these suicidal thoughts and
Yeah.
tendencies. And I wonder, so the medical industry where you're from, how would you rate it in terms of, I don't know if you've ever had any type of experience with medical care outside of Poland, but what is the medical care like in your country?
So in terms of, well, I think, let me just give you a long answer to this one. I think with the medical system, you need to know how to work for them. So it's not all bad, but you need to know when to go to them and when to not do that. And I think in terms of chronic illnesses, they are just not very good at detecting what the root cause is. The treatment is symptomatic, which basically means, it doesn't work. So most of the time you go to a doctor, you are told, you were just born this way because they don't know the real cause. And then they tell you this is a chronic illness. There isn't a cure for this. And so the only thing you can do is you can take this prescription drug that I'm going to be giving you, which will only work for the symptoms. So there is this whole, I think if they tell you it's not curable, what you should understand is I don't know how to cure it, and not that it is essentially, incurable. But this is what I was told. And I lived in England for 6 years. So I was exposed to another, let's say, system. And I would say it's all the same. They learn from the same books and they learn within the same system.
Well, outside of their schooling and education, most doctors read journals, right? That's how they get their, because I don't know too many doctors that will actually go sit in the lab and do lab tests on the medication they're going to give you,
Yeah.
right? They're just going to read whatever they're required to read, and then they'll prescribe based upon symptoms. And like I said, we're not being negative against the industry because I have family and friends, but there is something wrong with that, right? Where we're talking about, so my wife is not supposed to have kids at all. We have four. So you tell me if that doctor, God bless him, he had a big heart. He knew his craft apparently, but at the end of the day, he was not the final authority in my wife's body. So how can we have four children when the doctor tells us this is years before we conceive that you'll never have kids, and now we have four? So respectfully, the medical industry, I don't think they have the right to be authoritative in such a way to tell you, oh, this is uncurable or incurable, right? Like who are they to tell you that, right?
I'm not surprised to hear your story. And I think there is this author that speaks about this. His name is Nassim Taleb, as far as I know, Taleb.
Caleb?
And he speaks about the doctors in the medical system confusing the lack of evidence with the evidence for non-existence of something. And I think it happens a lot when they diagnose you. So they can't find the reason, so they just assume it doesn't exist. But those two things, they're not equal to each other.
That's very bold to make something like that, right? I know, at least my experience, doctors here will not say 100%. The number that they gave us was 99.9% chance you never have children. So I think they
Oh, beat that.
know. Yeah. So I think legally they know they can't say 100% because they'll get into trouble. And so from that moment on, when did you start to experience either a breakthrough or so? What turned the light bulb on for you at that moment?
I tried multiple things. It was mostly throughout the year that I was suffering chronic pain. So I tried multiple medications. None of them worked. Some of them were worse than others because some of them would actually put me in the hospital. That's how bad the side effects were. And most of them did nothing. So I would say doing nothing is actually the better thing. And then I was prescribed a monoclonal antibody. So this is a brand
Mm.
new treatment for migraines, and they say it's very safe. The only thing that can happen to you is constipation, and they say, I mean, comparing chronic pain to
Yeah,
constipation, I mean,
I don't
you
know.
choose that one. Yeah. And so they tell you it's safe and that it works, and they make it sound like it's a miraculous drug that's just going to fix everything for you. So I didn't know any other solutions, and I decided I would like to go on that drug. And it is true that at the beginning it did give me a little bit of a relief, but also it gave me some light sensitivity and some muscle cramps, and I stopped taking it. Then my migraines got so bad that I ended up at the hospital pretty much every month. And well, not only was it pain, but the doctors at the hospital were treating me like a hypochondriac,
Mm.
and they didn't want to treat me. So it was, the composition of those two things that made me go back on that medication. I went back on it, and again, it improved a little bit, but not enough. And then I decided I was going to do whatever it takes to get better. And this is when I heard of Jordan Peterson before.
Yeah.
And I experienced a lot of criticism from people around me because I was so sensitive to everything, and
Mhm.
people were finding it hard to believe. So it was incredible for me to know somebody who is like me. And I knew that the Lion diet, so the diet that is based on red meat, salt, and water, helped him. And it didn't even sound that insane to me at that time, but I decided to give it a go. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna start with red meat, and then I'm gonna reintroduce stuff because I bet I am not as sick as he is or his
Mhm.
daughter. And so I started there.
It's funny because I seen that interview. I think it was Joe Rogan, or one of those where they asked Jordan Peterson, "Wait, what are you eating again?" And he said, "I'm eating meat. Or actually, not meat. He said steak,
Yeah.
salt, and water." And I ain't gonna lie, Karolina, I was like, "Bro, this guy is crazy." And then I thought about it, and then he said, "But I don't recommend this for anybody. Don't do what I'm doing. This is what I chose to do." And when he said that, he made me want to even try it even more when he said, "Don't do this." Um,
Mhm.
and I'll be honest with you, like right now, I am nowhere near. So I did do the lion diet for 4 weeks,
Okay.
and then the fifth, I experienced the first. I think the first week it was like going to the bathroom was crazy. I ain't gonna lie, it's exactly what Joe Rogan experienced. But then after the second week, I felt amazing. I think the first 2.5 weeks, I lost 12 pounds.
Mhm.
And I'm sure a lot of it was water weight, but I felt a lot better. I did get some fatigue in terms of, I think it was mental, because all I was eating was either steak, salt, and water. And then I would either eat like chuck and I would put it in a crock pot and just cook it with salt and water. And because I wanted something to drink, but I didn't want to drink soda or juice. So I
Yeah.
figured if I drink the broth with the meat, it was, but that lion diet is legit. I will say,
Did you
um,
feel better?
I did, and I'll tell you, and I'm going to be very transparent with you and my viewers. Like where I am right now, um, I have a lot of rash that came back. I'm itchy,
Mhm.
and I already know why. It's because I'm not being 100% completely honest with the diet, and I do eat other things, and it's a little bit different in my household. And we'll talk about this. I want to talk about this, but like my family, it's hard for everybody to be on the same page as me. I got 6 people in my home, so it's a little bit
Mhm.
difficult. Not making an excuse, but here's a question I want to ask you, and I asked a couple of people on social media. So in Hawaii, we have good food. I mean, amazing food. I mean, we're on an island. We're not bombarded with that corporate farm structure like you would be like in the rest of the United States. We got fresh fish. We got organic vegetables, things that are, non-GMO. We have that available. Um, Culturally, my grandmother, great grandmother, they had good food. They cooked good food. They didn't believe in this whole um, like processed type foods. Everything was always cooked every day, just good food. And do you think that with your diet, I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but with your diet structure, outside of your health issues, do you think that you would have the same radical approach to diet if you were living in a different place with different food or dietary choices?
So I would say Poland is pretty good in terms of food. People mostly eat unprocessed foods, including my family. So I don't think, I mean, I wouldn't be radical just for the sake of it. I used to laugh at people who were on diets, when I was in high school. I was like, why would you do that, So I think, that really didn't age very well. So I think it's just the health issues that made me go as radical
Hmm.
and going on this beef only diet. And like I said, my plan was to reintroduce stuff. And every time I tried to reintroduce something, it was just an absolute catastrophe. So this is how I ended up on the diet. And I always say, because people think, it's people treat it like it's a choice. Like, why would you do that? Don't you try to eat something else? And well, I did try, and everything else caused an adverse reaction. So this is how I ended up being radical.
So, how many years now on the carnivore diet? Are you in year four? What year are you in now?
I think well, it depends how you count, because at the beginning I went on the lion diet in October 2020, and after a month I managed to reintroduce vegetables. And then after 7 months, I started getting headaches from vegetables as well. So this is when I dropped them. But the only meat that I could eat from the beginning was beef. I couldn't do chicken, couldn't do pork, couldn't do
Mm.
fish, nothing like that. So I was doing just beef and vegetables the first 7 months. And then, I kind of ditched that. And it has been just meat from April 2021.
Now, do you, in terms of seasoning, is it straight salt or do you add, have you tried to introduce different types of seasoning?
Just salt.
That's so boring, but
It
hey,
is.
it is, right? I ain't gonna lie. I mean, we gotta be, so what about vegetables? Are there any vegetables that you miss?
Um, I wouldn't. I don't think so. To be honest, I
Yeah.
don't think about this at all.
Yeah.
Only thing I miss is tea. I
Ah.
wish I could drink tea, and perhaps alcohol. It wouldn't be so bad if I could do that.
Uh,
I think that's
maybe
good.
they can make a carnivore alcohol. I don't know, stick a couple of
Yeah,
raw.
I don't know how they would do that,
I
but
don't know
yeah.
either. Well, in terms of, so for people that don't know, I think we should cover this. The carnivore diet is basically the absence, and you can correct me. I want to just lay it out, but you can add to it or correct it. To me, the carnivore diet is not. It's not a radical. For some people, it is, but it's a diet that eliminates. I'm going to just say 99% of everything that. Let's use America as an example. Every single vegetable food product in the store has at some point been manipulated, whether it's through genetic modified organisms or some kind of chemical, pesticides, herbicides. When you eliminate all of that possibility and you go back to the root of a singular source of food, whether it's steak, chuck, or it could be like a meat product, a red meat product, it's like what you said, you eliminate everything and you tried to introduce, I think Kayla Peterson did that, right? She talked about trying to add certain like avocado. She thought she could eat avocado, but it got worse, right? So for those that don't know, that's the idea and the concept. And I do agree with that because it's like I said, in the United States in general, 95% of the stuff you can get in the store is not healthy either by origin and how they got the food product to the shelf, or it's a lot of unknowns. You just don't know what may be affecting your body in a inflammation, right? Or some other unhid or hidden way. So I commend you, Carolina, that you don't miss vegetables. Bro, I love certain vegetables. I ain't gonna lie. There's some vegetables that taste so good to me because I grew up with that. Um, so for you, let's say 3-4 years, in terms of improvement, where are you now health wise? Improvement from, I think when we chatted on Instagram, where are you now physically in regards to your diet and all those changes?
Mhm. I don't have chronic migraines, so this one has definitely disappeared. I don't have any mood issues. I don't get depressed. I get, normal levels of anxiety. However, some of my problems have not been fixed. I am still technically on disability. And there is only so much that the diet can fix. And I think there is certain people who are going to go on this diet, all of their problems are going to be fixed, but there is some people who are going to be more complicated than that and need some additional support. And I would say I am one of those people. And it doesn't make the diet not useful. I had many people tell me, like, if you went on that diet, you've been sticking to it for so long, like, why are you still on it? Because you're still not healthy. And I would say, you're comparing me to the wrong person because you're comparing me to a healthy human and not to a human that I would be if I wasn't on this diet. And I know it's difficult to imagine, but it could be much worse than it is right now. So I do have light sensitivity, and it's mostly to artificial lights. When there is artificial lights, even daytime in the restaurants, it's there is sunlight plus some artificial lights. I need to put glasses on because my nerves here are gonna head, and when they head, I'm gonna get a migraine, and that's a result of being prescribed the CGRP monoclonal antibody. And also, I was so the way the medication, because it was an antibody, like I said, so it impacts the immune system. This medication weakened my immune system. And as a result, a year after the injection, I developed SARS. So this is mold toxicity, essentially. Your body is so weak, the immune system is so weak, it is unable to withstand any toxins in the environment. And that happened post that injection as well. And what happened recently, so my neurological issues after that injection got better. And then I suddenly got very weak. I got weak to the point where I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't shower. I couldn't like lift a shampoo bottle. That's how bad it was. And I ended up going to the hospital. Again, I don't really trust doctors, but for, if there is a life threat, I do go. And I wasn't sure that there was a life threat, but I knew that I felt very bad and I wasn't improving. And I went to a doctor and he said it was a cold. And I just, I stayed in bed and I stayed and I covered myself with blankets, but it wouldn't heal me. So I ended up going to the hospital and I asked, please just examine, tell me what is wrong, diagnose me. They did a morphology and they discovered the doctor said, well, your blood count is very low. I didn't know how low, but my hemoglobin was at the level of 4.5, which means I had hours to live. So I had anemia. That's another long story. I don't know if we should go into that right now or perhaps leave it for later. But I ended up having transfusions. I ended up making a full recovery in terms of blood. My blood, last time I checked, the hemoglobin was around the level of 15. And when you go to the hospital, they only, let's say, refill it to the level of 8 or 9. And then, your body either starts making its own hemoglobin or it doesn't. So my body did. It's at 15 right now. So I don't have anemia. However, the cause of my anemia is still unknown.
So that's CIRS. It's CIRS. Is that
Yeah.
correct? That's the one. Now that's the one that it affects folic levels. Is it affecting folic levels directly or indirectly? Do you know?
Some people who have CIRS experience a decrease in their folic acid levels. It still hasn't been examined whether the reason is CIRS or perhaps the reason is somewhere else. Right now, I think the reason, because I suffered from hemolytic anemia, and this is what the doctors know. So the doctor in the hospital didn't tell me this, and she blamed everything on the diet, which I think was just a very easy solution for her, and it was not true. Afterwards, I saw another hematologist. He didn't know about my diet, and he said that this is clearly hemolytic anemia. And if you have hemolytic anemia, what happens is the red blood cells are being destroyed constantly. And because of that, your body needs much more folic acid than it otherwise would. And that's why it uses up all of the folic acid in your
Mm.
system. So my question was, does mold have hemolytic tendencies? So if you have mold in your environment, would it cause hemolysis and as a result cause folic acid deficiency? And I recently read some science papers saying this is possible. I don't know if this happened in my case, and I actually found another solution which I think is much more probable than this one. But I would say it is possible that mold influences or at least it reinforces that process in your body when it is happening for another reason.
Do you know what type of mold? Because I watched a video on your Instagram. Like, what type of mold did?
They said it's penicillium or aspergillus. So those, let's say, strains can do that. And especially if you have also Staph aureus, which is a bacteria. So the bacteria would reinforce the hemolytic tendencies of those strains of mold.
So with that deficiency, now, if I'm not mistaken, folic acid is very important to like hair, skin, and nail health. If I'm not mistaken,
I'm not sure about that.
but so no issues with your hair during that time.
I think so. The says also so the two things that says typically causes in people is problems with thyroid, and
Mm.
also a lot of the time it causes PCOS. So that's the comorbidities of SARS. I have both. And my hair did fall out a bit more than usual
Yeah.
when I got the low thyroid, essentially. Then it kind of stabilized. Then I went to the hospital and my hair wasn't falling out. I went out of the hospital and like half of my hair fell out and it stopped again. And I think it was PTSD, to be honest.
Okay.
So, you know,
And I imagine they wanted to prescribe you with a whole bunch of other medications to address those things too. I'm sure.
oh yeah. I mean, but for PCOS, I'm not sure if there is anything. Perhaps, contraceptives as well, but the gynecologist that I saw said that he wouldn't give them to me, luckily.
Now,
Uh,
what's PCOS?
oh, that's a polycystic ovary syndrome.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Yes.
That's what the birth control medication would be for.
Yeah, I think I'm not
Or
sure if they would do
contraceptives,
that.
yeah.
However, he did say specifically that he wouldn't give that to me, so I'm
You
grateful
know,
for that.
the whole contraceptives, birth control medication, for some reason, it's like a magical coverall. I feel like when it comes to doctors, like they think it'll just. I don't. I'm not a doctor, so as a disclaimer, family, we are. Oh, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not sure if Karolina is a medical
No.
doctor in secret. But I tell you this, I'm impressed. We can kind of go sideways for a second. One of the things that really got my attention too on your Instagram is that you are a student of not just information, but you're a student of learning, not just in your condition, but you're very passionate about educating yourself. What do you, how do you research your conditions and all those things? What do you use to figure out all that stuff? How do you learn all that? That's part of the main question.
Yes. So I would say I work with three sources primarily. So one of them is still doctors. Sometimes they can be useful, but you need to know how to work with them. The second thing, and to be honest, I think this one is the most important, is being connected to people who are sick as well, because
Mm,
those people do a lot of research and they can help you. And I would say it's not people who are sick, but people who achieve better results than the ones stipulated by their doctors. And this is the people that I try to be in contact with. And sometimes, it happens when you're dealing with chronic illness. I mean, you lose hope, you give up. And those people tend to be the ones to get me back up. And in certain situations, they're going to send me a paper because I no longer have the strength to do the research on my own. Or they're going to say something that is going to be like, okay, let me just check this one thing. And I would say it did happen like 3 times in the times when I most needed it. And so the third place where I take information from is directly from scientists. And I think this is much better than going to the doctors. And then I do go to the doctors, but this is mostly for acute things, for life threats. Basically, if there is any type of work that needs to be done, like getting referrals, getting transfusions, getting antibiotics, I go to doctors, but I need to know prior to going to the doctor what is wrong with me. And I definitely do not rely on them for, the conceptual stuff unless it's really kind of easy. Without, it sounds a little bit contemptuous, but I feel like doctors really aren't good with dealing with chronic illnesses.
Now, there was a study, I think it was you. Was it you, the Harvard study?
Might have been.
Yeah, I think it was, they did it was kind of like a voluntary study.
Yeah.
Yeah, the voluntary one. I think, was it 2000? I can't remember. I think it was 2000
I
people.
think it was 2020, if we
2020.
speak about the same one, about
Yeah,
the
oh yeah,
carnivore diet.
yes, the carnivore, yeah. And do you remember the details of that study?
Yes. So 95% of patients improved, and they improved in a multiple of conditions. And some of the improvements were quite striking. So I remember the improvements were in cardiological illnesses, in urological illnesses, neurological, in diabetes. It was incredible improvement. I think 92% of people who had type 2 diabetes went off of insulin, which is pretty uncanny, and a variety of other conditions. And pretty much, I think 90 something percent of people reported that they simply felt better, had better energy, better health. Um, so yeah, it was quite incredible. There is a limitation to that study because it was self-reporting,
Right,
but
right.
still, I mean, how many people who have cardiological problems and take, the blood pressure medication report self-improvement, or even, especially, I think, in terms of the psychiatric conditions, I think it's around 40%, not 98.
Well, okay, so if there's self-reporting, okay,
Yeah.
I'll shut that down for a second for anybody that's a naysayer. If they're saying, "Oh, it's self-reported," well, when is the last time we actually volunteered to talk to a college or an educational system to give them personal information about
Yeah.
myself? It's not common. So, to me, that's a very valid study,
Hmm.
very valid. I think it would be less valid if they actually paid people to do a test because now there's financial compensation,
Oh yeah.
right? And maybe there's other compensation. So
Hmm.
I will say when I did my 6 weeks of the straight lion diet, for sure, my energy levels were through the roof. It was really good. Um, I'm not sure how it is in Poland, but in the United States, they have the Food and Drug Administration. You ever heard of the FDA?
Yes.
Isn't it ironic? So, what is his name? I'll remember his name in a second. But isn't it ironic that the federal government in the United States employs an organization? I gotta go widescreen for this.
Okay.
They employ an organization that is in charge of the food you eat and the drugs you have to take, and
Yeah.
they're governed by a singular body called the FDA. Why?
Yeah.
And nobody questions that. It's almost like if you were to get arrested by a cop and that same cop was also your judge and your executioner. It's people don't question that, and I think that's one of the things politically moving forward. Those are some of the things that we have to, as not just as Americans, but even globally, if there's organizations that are policing the food and the drugs that we need, quote unquote, need, there's a problem there. There's something going on there. I mean, we talked about the diabetes, right? The type 2, right? They got off of
Yeah.
insulin. That's dangerous. That's extremely dangerous for the well being of the corporate America or corporate entities for people to actually get healthy and better on their own without their medication.
Yeah. So two things I wanted to comment on. First of all, I never thought of it myself, the FDA food and drug, but now it makes sense. I mean, you eat this food and then you need those drugs, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing, yes, in terms of the study on the carnivore diet, I mean, even if you want to undermine its credibility as evidence for the functioning of the carnivore diet, I think it makes a legitimate hypothesis that should be checked uh, by physicians and by researchers.
There's a, so I'll share a little bit of story for me. How old am I? Shoot, I'm 48. So I can't even remember when I stopped. I used to do anabolic steroids. Um, I used to stick a needle in
Mhm.
my Hawaii, we say okole, which is my butt, or I
Mhm.
would stick it in my leg. Here's the funny thing, Carolina. I'm terrified of needles to this day. I cannot stand the sight of needles, but yet I still found a way to inject myself with anabolic steroids because I wanted to have this physique. I wanted to look a certain way.
Mhm.
And so my past in that realm, I made a choice and a decision to do those things to my body. And I think what's really powerful with what you're doing, making a decision to not necessarily just abandon, because I think you were very clear. Hey, if I really need a doctor, I'm going to go and get. If I'm not breathing, of course I'm going to call a doctor.
Yeah.
But there's a trust factor from the medical industry to where we are. There's something that needs to change. Whether we educate ourselves, we find the resources, and I wrote those down. Doctors connected to the sick and scientists, and but there's a website. Have you ever heard of PubMed.org?
Yeah.
What do you think of PubMed.org? Do you think it's legit, not legit, or what's your thoughts on it?
I think there is a lot of research there. And so I think you can find all sorts of articles there. But to be honest, I never evaluated it in terms of credibility.
Yeah.
I mostly, to be honest, I would say I mostly experiment on myself. And if something works for me, I stick to it. If something doesn't work, I don't stick to it. So I would take the information from that website and then test it on myself. And this is how I go about this. There is people that I listen to on podcasts, there is carnivore doctors, and they tell me a lot of the time this research, it's not credible. This hypothesis or this conclusion is false. And most of the time, sometimes I believe them because this thing didn't work for me. But I never really spent the time examining the research and saying, I did read a couple of papers. There was especially this one that made me laugh a little bit. And it also taught me to always read more than just the heading, because it was about the natural, so it's called NDT, a natural desiccated thyroid medications for, if you have a hypothyroidism, and you can extract the FT4 and FT3 from pork or from beef. And the medication published on the source published on the NHS website was saying, do not take those drugs, they do not work. And if there was a link to the study, I clicked on the study. The title also said, do not take this medication. And then when I looked at the results, it said that they tested it in multiple clinical trials, and the efficacy of NDT was exactly the same as of the synthetic drugs. And it also said in one of the studies that the efficacy was the same. That was pretty much in 5 of them.
Right.
And also that people who were on NDT managed to lose much more weight. So they were actually much happier with the results, and also they had much less side effects. But the title on the website was avoided at all costs. So I would say, yeah, always read more than just the heading.
Read further.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I wonder how many people they test, right? And so that's the one thing I do like about PubMed.org is that they do show you the numbers, right? Like how many people, how many
Yeah.
weeks the study was done. I think I found out about PubMed. I think it was because I needed a liver medication or a liver supplement, and so that's how I found out about it. And I think they are, if they're .org, I believe they are considered a nonprofit, or they're supposed to be. So, but I am concerned, like how many of those studies are funded, right, with
Yeah.
agendas, right? So here's a question. I think I wrote it down. Be sure I didn't forget. So in terms of the study aspect or the education aspect, so outside of those 3 areas, is there anything that you're passionate about? I know we're going to go a little bit more on the passion, but outside of your carnivore diet, lion diet, finding the pieces of the puzzle to your health, what do you do in terms of like education and study?
Mhm.
What do you enjoy reading outside of the health? Is there anything else besides
Mhm.
medical?
Anything, anything that makes me think, to be honest. I wouldn't limit myself to one area. However, I do have a large preference for psychology. I really like reading the psychology things. And here, Jordan Peterson would obviously be an authority in that topic. Apart from that, philosophy. I really enjoy that when you read a philosophy book, every sentence, there is a meaning, there is a reason why every single word was put in a sentence. And I enjoy that aspect of it very much. I feel like I get a dopamine hit every time I understand a sentence. And in philosophy books, it takes a little bit of effort to understand every single sentence in the book. So that's a lot of dopamine for me. And apart from that, I enjoy reading about economics as well. And I would say it's mostly because it's so far away from who I actually am. And I feel like this is an area where I should develop, because essentially I wouldn't be too good at it if I didn't work on it. So I read about that as well.
I'm gonna call you out on a word. Okay, so uh, I feel like the word dopamine has like
Okay.
gotten so much popularity lately. And I was
Mhm,
telling my wife today, I said, what is up with this word dopamine? Like, I don't know. When I was a kid, growing up, the word was adrenaline.
mhm,
So, and we're talking about being big on words. So, how would you distinguish adrenaline versus dopamine?
mhm. That's a good question. I think, isn't adrenaline a threat response, something that motivates you, when you go into the fight or flight mode? That's adrenaline is the thing that's going to make you fight. And
Yeah,
dopamine is pleasure. Yeah. So the opposite of pleasure
right.
is pain. When you feel any sort of pleasure. And you don't have to be in fight or flight. I think you cannot be in fight or flight, in fact, to experience a dopamine hit, because you need to be rested.
That's a very good point because I don't think jumping out of a plane I would feel dopamine. I think it wouldn't be
Yeah,
pleasurable. It would be like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. You
yeah.
know.
I mean, maybe there is some dopamine to it as well, but I don't know. I would mostly link it with adrenaline. Yeah.
So on your Instagram, that's where well, actually through YouTube, and actually the guy that I follow on Twitter,
Mhm.
he's the one that interviewed you, and I don't know how I was watching a bunch of Jordan Peterson, and we'll come back to Jordan Peterson. He's a great topic to talk about. But I found him, the guy that interviewed you, Carnivore JT, and I found him on Twitter, and now I follow him on Twitter. He's such a feisty. Oh my gosh, he is a troublemaker that makes me. He's so entertaining.
Yeah.
I think his slogan is "Eat a beef and steak, eat a effing steak." Um, but it all started for me, and I think was a Jordan Peterson interview, and in a realm of psychology. So I actually had two psychologists that I've been so fortunate to interview here on my podcast. Psychology in the area of, especially things that we're attempting to achieve in the area of health, but the carnivore diet, the lion diet. Jordan Peterson, you know what attracts me about him is that he can go to any city and say, I'm going to be at this theater, and people will show up and
Yeah.
just sit there and listen to him talk. And I think that's crazy. Like, so for you, what is it about Jordan Peterson that really let's talk about him because he intrigues me too. But what is it about him that gets your attention? What do you like about him so much? Just curious.
At first, I got to know him because of the Kathy Newman interview. And I used to be
Oh yeah,
fairly,
yeah. I
yes,
remember that. Yeah, I remember that
it was
interview.
really good.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I was a teenager, I never really, naturally, I never was really into feminism. I never, and it wasn't because, I was against it. It was just I didn't feel discriminated ever. And then I went to London and I started university there. And I believe Jordan Peterson also speaks about, the role of universities in kind of, educating people on the political topics. And I studied business management. And in fact, from the beginning, I would say the first 5 essays that we were supposed to write, there were a couple of topics that we could have chosen from. But one of them was always gender pay gap and sexism and feminism. And when people were telling me, sexism is everywhere and you should pay attention to it and it exists, then I absorbed it. And I started being a little bit more sensitive about it as well. However, because of who I was and because of what I experienced, also I did notice, sexism does exist. It's not like it doesn't.
Mhm.
And I was finding it quite difficult to align the two things because I never really experienced it. I didn't feel like it mattered that much. And then people tell me it is actually everywhere all the time, and I should pay so much attention to it.
Mm.
And so I was torn, but I, left it in the back of my mind. I didn't pay that much attention to it. And then I listened to the interview of Jordan Peterson with Kathy Newman. And, it just, I mean, it was a eureka moment for me.
He ate
It's
her up
exactly like what this guy
bad.
says.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he let her have it bad. Now, is that the one? Um, I think the word bricklayer, is that the word he used? Is that the one where he says, "Why aren't more people bricklayers?" That might be a different interview, but
Might
I
be.
do. Yeah, he let her have it on that. Yeah,
Yes. Yes, he did. She spoke about sexism and the gender pay gap.
yeah.
She did that. And then he said, it's a multivariate equation. And sure, there is sexism, but there is also other things. And as much as you cannot influence sexism, because you can't just, snap your fingers and make a man not sexist or a woman, but there is things you can have influence on. For example, learn how to negotiate, ask for a raise, ask for a promotion. And, then it hit me, and also it empowered me to make well, to contribute to the development of my career instead of leaving it in the hands of people who I was told, have all the power. It made me have the power as well.
So the idea that there is a inequality, I'll be the first person to tell you, men and women are not equal. They're not.
We're
It's
not the
it,
same. We
we're
cannot
not
be
the
equal.
same, and I don't mean we're not equal in terms of worth. Like
Yeah.
we were created, we have different body structures. What I think what people feel is that if you say that they're not the same, that means they're not the the worth is different, and that's not true. The funny thing is that that mindset doesn't apply. So if you ever come to my house, you ever come to Hawaii, you meet a lot of the Polynesian women, and to all of my family and Polynesian friends, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just being very honest. The typical Polynesian woman, whether she's Hawaiian, Tongan, Samoan, they're not small women. They're not frail. They're not tiny. They're not lesser than. A lot of them are pretty well built enough to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that they're the inequality, whatever, like, I'll give you a good example. One of my cousins, she's a truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
She's Hawaiian. Now she's one of very few, and I don't think it's the fact that she can't do the job or the women can't do the job, but I think historically we were so indoctrinated that truck drivers, that's for the men. Only the men can do it. And also for women, put it this way, as tough as my wife is, she's in the other room, so I gotta be careful. As tough as my wife is, okay, my wife she'll slug it out with anybody. But the minute there's a spider, guess who has to take care of the spider? This guy. The minute somebody breaks into our house, guess what? Honey, you go take care of it. So to me, we celebrate the fact that we're not created equal, but that doesn't mean that we're lesser than. There are amazing qualities that a man will never ever be able to do that a woman can. I will never be able to nurture a child the way that a mother can.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't care what anybody tells me. I know I got 4 kids. There's no way. But I mean to go so sideways on that. But so the Jordan Peterson, I think what he unlocked on so many levels, and I think and we're not praising him. I think he's the guy that unlocked a lot of things in a lot of our lives. Just the way his discussions, and the one that I did struggle with him was I don't know if I could sit in a room with him and have a discussion because he would be the one talking the entire time, which is fine because he goes from point to point to point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to pause just for a second to Twitch viewers. Thank you, Roger, and also brother Kyle out there on X or Twitter. And then for those on Instagram, thank you. If you guys share this out. And actually, Karolina, what is your Instagram handle? I'm going to type it in the stream, in the comments. How do I spell your
Yeah.
Instagram handle?
So it's Karoarr, Caro R, basically.
So Karoaarr.
OARR.
Okay, I'll just do it in Instagram. So I'll put it up on. So if anybody wants to connect with it, I actually put it in my promos on Twitter. So that's I spelled it correctly,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
That's right.
perfect. Well, I have a list of things, and how are you doing on time? You're okay on time?
I'm good. Yes.
I'm good too. I I told guys, I told Karolina when we first started. Um, I've been doing this for a while, but I always get nervous, but in a good way, because I want to make sure that we honor Karolina or any guest that I have. I want to honor their time. But there is something that I wrote down, and you answered most of it. But I will say, when I posted those pictures in the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the reason why I wanted to do that was in light of everything you've been through. When I saw those pictures, you look very, very happy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Which ones? I don't think I look very happy in the hospital ones.
No, not that one. Hold on, let's pull it up. Which one is it? Well, I thought that one. I mean, to me, this is cool, and I didn't. I think I have the other picture. I didn't put it up. There's a couple of other ones where there's one you did a dance on your Instagram.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Here's another question. when you post up those videos on Instagram, because for me, obviously I can't understand the Polish ones, but the English ones, has anybody ever reached out to you in a positive light, like, "Hey, thank you for putting this out there," or have you gotten any, or how about any feedback, negative or positive, on your Instagram?
On Instagram, I mostly get positive feedback. And I do tend to get a lot of messages from people either asking me because they struggle with health themselves. I do get some messages of people saying, I love your content. I love that you post this kind of stuff. And it does mean a lot because, when I post this stuff, I don't really think it's so amazing or anything. So I do appreciate somebody finding it useful. It's never my presupposition that it's going to be amazing and great for somebody. It's just things that I do consider important for me and that I think other people could potentially benefit from.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know if you, I don't know if the lights amplify it, but I get emotionally very quickly. Just my family, we've been through a lot of stuff, and when you share your story, there's a few times where it, even now, just thinking about it, I think what's powerful, Carolina, is that number one, you're transparent, and you're willing to share hospital photos. You're willing to share struggles. There's not a lot of people that do that. Where Instagram. That's how I found you, but everything's glamour. Everything is like filters, right? Tons of filters. Um, but I think it's powerful that you're sharing your story, and you remind me of, there's a YouTube channel. You ever heard of Ribeye Rach?
No.
She's a carnivore as well. She had this great recipe. It's osso buco. You ever heard of that meat? It's the beef shank. So
It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure what that
I
is.
think it's the leg of the cow, and they cut it in a cross cut, and so there's
Okay.
little nuggets of meat, but there's the
Mhm.
bone marrow inside too,
Okay. Yeah.
and so
I
you can.
like bone marrow. It's good.
Yeah. Oh my god. So, as a matter of fact, right now I'm we're making homemade beef tallow, so I got
Yeah.
it in the oven. Um, but the also buko, she had this recipe where um, she seared it, just salt, and then put it in I think a slow cooker, and oh, it's so good. You do it for a long time. It is so, it's got the meat, but it's got the jelly. You know, the gelatin from the cartilage. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look up Ribeye Rach, I'll text it to you. Ribeye Rach is, that's who you remind me of. She does a lot of the beef jerky recipes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, let's talk about food, because I'm about to get hungry. What are your favorite recipes or things that, if you
Favorite
have
recipe.
anything? Yeah, not really recipes, but
Yeah. I mean, we're speaking about two ingredients, so there is not much you can do. But what I eat mostly is I eat a lot of lamb chops. So I'd say it definitely is one of my favorites. So I just, take lamb chops frozen or not just from the fridge, put them in an air fryer, and then, 6 minutes each side, salt them, it's done.
I saw
Um,
that video. That looked good actually.
yeah, they're really good. And most people also think they don't like lamb. And, they tell me, "Oh, I don't like lamb, it smells." But then they try my lamb chops and they change their mind. It happened to me many times. So that's one of the things. And I also like ribeyes and mostly Black Angus. If I have Black Angus, that's amazing. I love it. And mostly when it's grilled, but from an air fryer, it's fine as well. And what else? One very weird thing that I like is I like veal burgers, but
Ooh.
I like to make them and put them in the fridge and then eat them really cold. So that's something that I like. And I feel like it tastes a little bit like bread if you haven't had bread for 3 years, because veal essentially has no flavor to it.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and veal can be kind of crumbly. Yeah, when you cook it, if there's not enough fat content, or
Yeah.
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 Um, do you eat pork?
No,
No
never.
pork.
I have very, very bad reactions to pork. I
Okay.
wouldn't touch it. No.
Do you think it's the pig itself, or do you think it's the way that it's processed?
I think there is multiple reasons for it. So one of them on the line diet to eat ruminant animals. So ruminant animals have this part of their digestive system that is called a rumen, and for whatever reason, the meat that you get from this kind of animals is just it contains less substances that can potentially be toxic, because how it is being digested is just getting rid of all of those toxic substances. And so porks or pigs do not have it. So that's one reason. And then the second reason is I think they are fed not very well. So I think they use. I'm not sure. I don't want to be to lie here, but I think they might feed them some stuff that contain those processed oils, and then you get those oils in the meat and things like that. I don't know, but I do know that I get insane migraines if I eat pork.
Well, they are dirty animals, so that
Yeah,
doesn't help that they're dirty animals. I wonder if you had a pig from Hawaii that all it eats is guava and
grass.
grass. I wonder because
I don't. I have no idea.
I always, there's an honest question. Like, so when I was, so in the Big Island on Hawaii, that's a very volcanic soil,
Yeah.
and I had this beef. We call it, I think it's Parker Ranch steak, and so it's grass fed. So for anybody that doesn't know, grass fed beef typically when you cook it, or even before you cook it, the fat tends to be a little bit more yellow. If it's
Mhm.
grain fed, it's white. I didn't like the flavor of the grass fed for some reason. I don't know why. I
Yeah.
really like grain fed, but I wonder health wise if we should be very deliberate on which type of beef. Have you experienced any type or done any experimentation on the type of beef that you consume?
Yes. Sometimes consciously, sometimes not. Overall, I listened to an interview with Rob Wolf, so that was right before I went on the carnivore diet, and he says that he made research on it, and that in terms of nutrition, whether it's grain-fed or grass-fed, it's going to be the same. However, and I don't know what they feed it with, so that's the problem. But if I buy food off of a Polish supermarket, Polish beef, sort of the cheapest one, but I'm talking about ribeye still, I can't digest it. I'm not gonna get a migraine, but I cannot digest it for the life of me. So it needs to be, and I'm not really sure because again, I don't know what they feed it with, but I know that if I get it and it's more expensive, then I can digest it. I definitely can digest grass fed. I can digest ecological, so meat, which I think is partially grain fed too. But this like Polish cheap meat, I don't know what they give to those cows, but I cannot digest it.
Joe Rogan did a great podcast.
Yeah.
Can't remember the name, but they're ranchers. They are regenerative farmers,
Yeah.
and so they have it was him and his daughter. They talked about beef in the United States, and I'm going to throw a fake number because I can't remember, but it was like 80% of the beef brought into the United States. It's not even from the United States, but they're allowed to label U.S. beef because if they get a cow from Venezuela, they bring it into the country. If they process it in the United States, cut it up and package it and add value to it, then they can say it's U.S. beef.
Okay.
And so we're talking about origin and safety and what's the word efficacy of the quality of the beef, right? We're talking about if the beef grain fed, grass fed, will it affect autoimmune conditions, migraines? Well, it is concerning, especially in the United States, when you don't even know where your beef is coming from. And number two, there's so many designations. You've got grass fed, grass finished, you've got grain fed. Good night, you going to sleep? Okay, love you, son. So you got grain fed. So there's so many different formulas of how they make your steak. It's crazy. They're not legally required to be 100% honest about it,
Yeah.
right? So we talk about so many variables. And so you talk about the cheap steak, you can't digest it, but grass fed, right? I
Yeah.
totally agree with that because it's like, what the heck are they feeding these cows? We don't know what they're feeding them. It to me, it's like if I have a ranch, bro, I got a timeline. Let's get this cow fat, get them to the butcher, hurry up, let's feed them with whatever
Oh
we got
yeah.
to feed them, right?
That might happen, but I still don't know what that is. And I even tried to ask. I have a farmer in my family, but he mostly has pigs, and I tried to ask him, but he wouldn't tell me. I think it's some sort of like a formula for pigs, so perhaps it's a similar formula for beef as well. So it's something processed. I don't know.
Maybe you should have him raise a couple of cattle and you just get it from him. Then we get it, the
Yeah,
source.
yeah, I don't know, but in terms of the beef, so from the supermarkets, like I said, it never happened that they gave me any autoimmune symptoms, and migraine never happened, or any other ones. The only problems with digestion. However, I did have problem once when I got mince, and I was getting insane migraines from it, and I think they were mixing it up with pork or something else. I don't know. It was probably pork. So I am actually able to detect that, and that happened once.
Sometimes the fat. I saw a video where they'll mix the meat with various fillers, right?
Oh, maybe.
And so sometimes they'll use certain types of fillers, like what's the word? Like
Sometimes
the
sulfates.
sulfates, and then sometimes connective tissue from other animals, and it makes it more. It helps it to bind a little
Yeah,
bit
but
better.
it should be written in the ingredients, and I did read the ingredients of this one because sometimes, so if you go to Spain, for example, in Lanzarote, right, when I was there, I couldn't eat mince because I noticed they were adding sulfates to it. So I could only get the like regular cuts because that was 100% meat, and that one was like 98 or something like this, so I wouldn't get that. But in Poland it was written 100% beef, and I'm sure it wasn't.
So you don't eat chicken either, right? Do you eat eggs? Have you tried eggs?
No. Well, I tried chicken and that didn't work. So then I was like, oh, well, eggs, I mean, it's the same thing, kind of, if not worse. So thank you.
The reason why I asked, I made this recipe. Okay, it's
Yes.
not a recipe, but I cooked. It's like venison, which is I think the venison we had is a mixture of I want to say deer and elk,
Okay. Oh,
and
that I
so
can do.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so good. Elk. Oh my god, it's so good. Although it's not fatty, so you have to have. Now, do you do butter?
No. So that's another thing. I didn't try eggs, but I tried dairy, and I even tried so butter, and I tried ghee, which, well, people say it doesn't contain any dairy whatsoever anymore. Couldn't even do that. Like a teaspoon of that would trigger migraine.
Wow, that's so strange.
Yeah.
And you don't know why, right?
No. I mean, I think it has something to do with microbiome, and I think so. Overall, I think if your microbiome is very damaged, like mine is, that's when you get the problems with digestion. And I think what triggered those problems was the medications that I was prescribed, the birth control, but also painkillers because I was on painkillers for like 1 year every single day. So I think that probably destroyed my microbiome a bit as well. And also the CGRP monoclonal antibodies. I don't know what they did, but judging by the effects, it definitely was poison.
Do you remember the name of the contraceptive or the birth control medication? Do you remember the
Oh
name of it?
god, I don't. I know that it was the combined pill, so containing both progesterone and estrogen. And actually, if you have migraines with aura, it's just forbidden to prescribe to people who have migraines with aura those contraceptives. And my gynecologist kind of ignored that. So I know, there was a mistake on his part even coming from that.
And that's the one that affected your mood, right? Your
Yes.
mental well being. Yeah, because so my wife had one where they insert it into her arm, and they would like cut her in, and they would insert,
Yeah.
but it affected her mood and her mental
Yeah.
well being so much. Um, just thinking about it is crazy. Like that they prescribe these things, and like not me, but I'm just saying if I was a mother, like we're the test subjects.
Yes. And
And,
yeah,
and you thought that, okay, I'm gonna call you out on the because I meant to call you out earlier. So you said that one of the side effects was just what was it, constipation, right?
oh, that wasn't the migraine medication. That was
That
the
was
neurological one. Yeah.
right, and I'm like, okay, that's hard to believe that that's only because we all know
Oh yeah.
medications got more than one side effect, and usually suicide is one of them.
Oh
suicide,
yes.
suicide, constipation, diarrhea, things,
Yeah,
right? It's
something like
everything.
that.
Yeah. So going back to I feel like we're trying to put a puzzle together, right? I feel like we're trying to find the pieces that work and what doesn't work. How are you feeling right now? Let's say if you were to look, this is just a random question. If you and I meet up a year from now, 2 years from now, what do you feel? How do you feel? Like, let's talk about nutrition, mental well being. Where are you going to be in life? Do you feel you're on a good starting point right now?
Okay, I don't know. I really don't know. I discovered something recently that I find pretty interesting, and maybe I'm just gonna speak about this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I went out of the hospital, and like I said, I had this anemia of an unknown cause. That was the diagnosis that I got. And I was told that I would never find out what triggered my anemia. So I was actually very scared because I was like, I don't know how and why, but I think I'm gonna find out. And I think the only way I can find out about this if it happens again, and it was the worst thing I ever experienced in my life, and I didn't want that to happen. However, my blood tests, they kept on being really good, but I am still sick. There is still something wrong with me. I still have neurological problems. I am still on disability. I still have this trigeminal nerve pain that just won't go away. And it's been 3 years almost. And and I also have SARS, so the mold toxicity. And it is tiring because I have to move so much, and I have problems in pretty much every flat that I live in. There is one flat in Warsaw that I could live in, and I lived there for 3 months without any issues. But I had some other problems with it. It wasn't for long-term rent, so I had to change it. Moved to another one. There was some chemical substance that I was reacting to. I kept on having fever. I moved out. I am in a hotel now, and I'm planning to stay here for a year. But I discovered there was mold in my dishwasher, actual living mold, because somebody left a paper instruction inside. It was damp, and so when I pulled it out, there was actual black mold on it. I, threw it out. They exchanged my dishwasher, but right now I still feel, sometimes not very well, and all of this, and also it's just so scary to investigate all of that, because sometimes I'm really scared about what I'm actually going to discover. But I spoke to a friend of mine, and she is ill as well, and she's doing really a lot of research. She is reading books, investigating everything, and she has the courage to look for explanations. She's not scared, I think, or courageous enough to find out what's actually going on with her. And she's the one who recently, when she was on a call with me, she said that in a SARS book, she read about this thing called porphyria. And she said that it sounded like it might make sense with me, that I would have it. And what porphyria is, so this is just going to be, I'm not a scientist, not a doctor, it's just in my own vocabulary. But it seems like some people have these toxic substances in their blood, and their porphyrins, and that can be a result of many things. So it can be, an innate illness, but it can also result from, for example, poisoning by medications. So this is where it would also make sense with me. Porphyria can also lead to anemia, including hemolytic anemia that I had. And then I read an article that this girl also sent to me, that every single person who has porphyria also has something called KPU. And then KPU is going to translate into a deficiency of vitamin B6 and magnesium. And I had very severe problems with magnesium. It was so bad that I couldn't actually walk, because if I walked for 10 minutes, my body would lose so much magnesium that I would have to recover for the next week after a 10-minute walk. And I decided to have a blood test for porphyria, and it's positive. I had that blood test 2 weeks ago. I got the results last week, I think. I booked a hematologist appointment straight away, and I had it 2 days ago. And I had this blood test done when I was already good. My blood looks okay. And a symptom of porphyria would be pink or brown urine, which I had back in the hospital when I had anemia. And back then, for whatever reason, they didn't check me for that illness, despite the fact that I was in the hospital for 10 days and they found nothing. So if the porphyrins in my blood right now are at 200% the norm, then it must have been much, much worse when I was in the hospital. So I went to see a hematologist, and the hematologist said this is, a credible hypothesis. And he just gave me a referral to go to the hospital to get all of the genetic tests and, well, to just diagnose it properly. So I just need to get another referral from a GP, and then I will probably go to the hospital. I will be diagnosed. And it is very interesting because people who have KPU, they checked it, tend to, first of all, if KPU is treated, and that is mostly treated with supplementation, so it's not that difficult to cure. But I think the supplementation, it's just throughout the life, because your body is going to lose B6 and magnesium and a couple of other things anyway if you have it. But if you supplement those things, the porphyrins in your blood tend to decrease. So it seems like it can actually be a root cause of many of the issues. And also, and that is where it all comes together, people who have KPU and have it treated, their environmental illnesses, such as SARS, also tend to improve. So I don't know where I'm going to be a year from now. Last year, if you asked me, I didn't think I would have a near-death experience, and I did. But I do have right now one hypothesis that I think is very interesting, that I already had one positive test for. And I think potentially if we can address that, perhaps I can recover.
When we messaged back and forth, I think, was that in December or November? I can't
I
remember
think
what
it was
month.
even earlier than that, because that was literally right after I went out of
Yeah,
the
that's
hospital.
right. That's right. And I remember you asked that, hey, I just need a little bit more time. I'm like, yeah, whatever amount of time you need. Well, I'll tell you this. Man, my heart goes out to you. I'll tell you that much. I can't hide that. My heart goes out to you. And I think that
Thank you.
struggle, but I will say, um, what you post on your social media is very victorious, right? Even in
How
light
is
of
that?
you. Well, I looked at, I think the dancing one.
Oh,
Whatever I don't even know what the context is, because a lot of your socials are in a different language. So
yeah.
I just accepted that as a victorious. But I would say those are the other things for me. And I don't have your struggles, but I know that there are people out there that need to hear not just your story, but your struggle. Because you know this for a fact, right? There are people out there that are either going through the same thing or worse, right, than us. And I think your story is very powerful. And I think this whole puzzle of trying to find the pieces. Um, Before I continue that thought, so when you're in a different room in a different environment, um, who inspects the room? Who inspects the dishwasher or the bedding, the walls? Are you doing it yourself?
Well, my body is going to tell me. So nobody has to do that. I mean, this hotel is brand new. It was open in November. And as much as, the materials used for new buildings are worse quality, so throughout the years they are going to deteriorate much more than the old ones. When you move in for the first year, technically it should be fine. So I basically always live in new buildings, and I know I can safely stay there, say, for 3 years, and then I will probably have to move out because, for example, the ventilation system, it is never cleaned. Like, people just don't clean it. So if you have a building and it's 20 years old, you have 20 years of built up dust inside of the ventilation system that has never been cleaned and will never be cleaned. And if you ask, say, the management of the building, they're just going to say, oh, the ventilation, the air just goes out and it doesn't go in. So it's impossible that you're reacting. But then I'm like, well, my body is telling me something else.
Yeah, this is
So yeah.
otherwise. We used to have this air filter. It was like $600,
Mhm.
and it was, I can't remember the name of it because we don't have it anymore. but we would push a it was a sanitize button, and it would literally go through walls, and it would sanitize everything. And if there were bed bugs in the room, it would kill all the bed bugs. It would. Um, the only thing is you couldn't be in a room for 8 hours, so you'd have to turn it on
Oh,
and leave the house.
wasn't it ozone?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
But it was I can't remember the name of, but it had these ceramic plates that you had to clean ever so often, and it had these UV lights as well.
Oh, I have a UV lamp as well. It's great.
Yeah, and the ozone, it had a very strong ammonia chloroxy smell
Ugh,
when you, but it
yeah,
would disinfect the entire room. It would kill everything. You couldn't go back in the house for probably 8 hours or so.
yeah.
But do you have anything like that can like sanitize a room like
I
that?
do.
Okay.
Actually, I have it right here. So this is a UV lamp
Okay.
that you can see right here. And this one is going to destroy all of the mold and bacteria. So it's a light, you just switch it on and you leave it. Because I had a problem with this dishwasher. It's directed at my dishwasher, and I basically just never switch it off. And back when the dishwasher was still here, before they took it, it was all on all the time. And it was really saving me. When it was not on, I was in pain all the time, constant migraines. When it was on, I had a little bit of headaches sometimes. So it really makes a massive difference. And I tried air filters as well. I think there is one in the US that I'm trying to get right now. And I tried multiple ones from Poland, and honestly, I felt zero difference. I don't know why they were that inefficient, but I'm trying to get the one from the US. I think the company is called Air Oasis. And this one, apparently, it works for SARS patients.
Oasis. How much is it?
Oasis.
Oasis? Okay, I might look them up. I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah, it's like $250, something like this. 200, I don't remember.
Do you guys
For
have?
a small one, like for
Okay.
this room. Yeah.
Do you guys have Amazon in Poland?
We do,
Oh,
but we
you do.
don't have all of the US brands. So
Well, all of our U.S. brands are made in China, so
yeah.
it's all made in China. Yeah. Well, what's the next chapter for you? After we hang up today, what is the next chapter for you? Do you know yet?
Well, I have a job now. So
Okay.
because I was disabled, I was out of work for a long time. So I'm planning to carry on doing this. And I think I see that in Poland, the awareness of the health awareness overall isn't very developed. So I think I would like to aim at, bridging the gap. I do have some access to the scientists and also the people who suffered from the illnesses and the doctors and a lot of resources that are in English. And I would really like to bring all that to Poland. So I think I will aim at doing that in the future. I think, spreading awareness about SES is really important because people really minimize the impact that the environment can have on you. And I mean, I used to be one of them. Right now, I know that you shouldn't, do that. So that's another thing. And another thing that I'm investigating right now is this porphyria. And I think it can potentially be very interesting. It can also turn out it's going to be very uninteresting and completely, useless as diagnosis. But I did hear that, like says, it affects 25% of people. And if it does, then it can potentially be a door to treating a lot of illnesses that we currently don't know how to treat.
I think with what you just shared, the word that popped up is well, it's multiple words. I think one that stuck out was ambassador, advocate. I know you said in college you did business management. My wife is actually working on her master's in business management right now.
Okay.
So, um, I don't envy that. Yeah, but I will say this: the next chapter, I really believe what I see just from me getting a chance to get to know you. There are so many ways for people to help each other out, not just on social media, but whether it's coaching, life coaching, walking people through things. There are people that do not know how to get out of the chapter of life that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
and you've been through enough chapters. I think you've been through enough chapters to walk a few people out of theirs. So I just want to encourage you, Caroline. I'm really blessed that you're sharing this story, and I'm looking forward to actually doing many more of these. Um, Outside of everything we talked about, what do you enjoy doing? And I think we're heading into our rapid fire pretty soon, but what do you enjoy doing outside of everything we talked about? What brings you joy?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I just wanted to comment on, sharing the story with other people. And I think all of this suffering doesn't really make sense if I can't help anyone else
Right.
because of what I've been through. So, I think it's just something that I should be doing. Um, Apart from that, what brings me joy? I like to connect with other people. I think that really brings me a lot of satisfaction. Um, I enjoy fitness, so I do a lot of that. And right now, my body also allows me to actually do it, which is a blessing because after the injection, I couldn't do that for around like a year and a half. So that's great. What do I also like? Reading. I like educating myself on topics. Um, I would say that's the three things that I like in life most.
I ain't gonna lie. You used some big words today. So, um, who was it? Joe Rogan was talking about. So when Joe Rogan said, when he was with Elon Musk, and he was, and then after he had another guest, and so the guest asked Joe Rogan, "So how was it hanging out with Elon?" And Joe Rogan was like, "I had no idea what he was talking about. I felt so stupid." And it's like, I will, and I'm not false praising you, Carolina, but I will say I can tell that you're highly educated and you desire to learn. So I think that's a major bonus, and I think that's awesome. Um, I wish you well in that because there are, like I said, if that's your desire, bro, go do it. You know what I mean? Like, what's stopping you other than, of course, what we talked about? But if that's your passion, do it. And the good news is, I think you've got a good platform. I know your social media is, you're not like I don't have a big following either, but if you, there's a saying that I have on social media. I think we're going to land a plane soon. Is in the chase of these numbers. So I'm on these groups on Twitter X, and a lot of these groups where our people are constantly chasing the big numbers. You know, I want to get 100,000 followers. I want to influence 10,000 people a day, whatever. But I want to encourage you and anybody that's watching is that never. So I'm not sure. Do you play music by any chance? Or
I play instruments, you mean?
yeah, do you play
Wow.
instruments? So
I
in
learned
music,
the flute in primary school, but that didn't go very far.
I'm a musician as well. So in music or singing, they have this it like what we call time signatures. So there's like a beat, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say a 4,
Yeah.
and we know that there's just timing. And you can apply this to life, but
Mhm.
one of my great friends who's a very successful singer, he said, never lose sight of the one. Whenever you have a beat, always come back on a one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And he says, no matter where you go in the song, always remember where that one is. And I use that analogy, Carolina, to social media where we get so caught up, I think sometimes as content creators, that I want to get a big reach. I want to have the big numbers. But you said earlier that most of your feedback has been good and positive.
Well, on Instagram, not on
Yeah,
TikTok.
on Instagram. And there's going to be that one person that's going to say, thank you so much for your story. And I think that's powerful. That one story that's so important. So I think this is a good landing spot. And I think if you're down, I want to do this again, but we'll do some focal points to talk about something, maybe some heavy issues, maybe political. I would love to get into politics with you one day, maybe creative stuff.
Sure.
Um, Anything you want to share before we do rapid fire?
Well, I have a question to you that I wanted to
Yeah,
ask.
sure. Go ahead.
I'm always curious with people who, are relatively healthy. I mean, what sparked your interest in the carnivore diet?
That's a good question. So when I was bodybuilding,
Yeah.
at the peak, I was eating what you would consider healthy, right? Well, not you, but just in general. You know, lean proteins, moderate carbs, just healthy, non-GMO, or as much as possible. I was consuming, I think, at most 5,000 calories a day minimum, but I was still losing weight. And part of it is because I was doing, I was doing drugs, doing anabolic steroids. So your body, the testosterone levels were so high. I was consuming a lot, and so my body was a direct reflection of what I was putting into it. I had this desire to look good physically and big and buff, whatever. Well, I got away from that, and I'll be very honest with you. I got to a point where, man, I look terrible. My stomach is like bulging, and it still is now, but not like how before. But it all changed when I saw that Jordan Peterson interview. That's when it started for me. It's like, okay, that sounds crazy. I watched Joe Rogan talk about it, and then he had a couple of doctors come on his show and talk about it. The one girl was really good. I can't remember her name, and that's when it started for me. Was okay. I have, in my house too, with the health condition with my kids and my wife, and I told my wife somebody has to. I'm going to glamorize it, okay, but somebody has to lead the way, and that's where it started for me. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try to make some changes, and that lion diet, I'm going to keep preaching, is legit. Like, now, I'm not going to be one of those guys that attacks other people that don't have the same, mindset as me. But I will say that the lion diet, which is beef, salt, and water, I would encourage anybody. Obviously, do your research, but I would encourage anybody to give it a shot and just see what it does. And I think that's where it started for me. Um, but being real honest with you, I'm not 100% honest with it all the time. I struggle like anybody else. I love. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I love Red Bull. Red Bull is my drink. My God, I love.
Oh my god.
But it's so bad for you, right? I know. But
Yeah.
what I
Well,
mean.
I mean, I actually I really don't like it. It's just so difficult for me to imagine.
But and that's a good place to be. I wish I could say that, but right now, Red Bull is in my brain. Drink me, come and drink me. But I hope that answers your question. There's just a lot more layers to that, I think, but that's
Hmm.
the core of it. You know.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Well, let's do a rapid fire. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Money not an issue. Oh no, wait. Actually, first question: why did you do this podcast with me today?
First of all, I think there's a lot of people who send me messages on Instagram and a lot of people who directly ask me about my story and about what happened with me. I prefer when people include a little bit about themselves when they ask me this type of questions because there is so many things that happen to me. I can't tell the whole story to everybody who's asking, and also, it has some emotional impact on me as well. So I thought, and this is why I'm also uploading videos on Instagram, I thought it's much easier to tell my story to one person once, rather than respond to everybody who's messaging me with the same story over and over again. So that's why.
Money not an issue. Where would you live?
Australia.
Ooh. Is there a desired cut of beef that you desire overall?
A ribeye, especially those really fatty ones.
Yeah, the good marbling.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we're gonna probably do carnivore questions. So, sous vide. You've had sous vide before?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay. Okay, so I can't ask that question.
Yeah.
Before, okay, so sous vide is awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now it is a little bit more wet. Like when you take it out of the bag, you really have to sear it really hard. So,
Mm.
um, okay, so here, I gotta adjust the question. So,
Yeah.
do you prefer grilled steak or pan fried steak?
Grilled.
Rare or medium rare?
Oh God, medium. I don't even do medium rare.
You don't like medium rare?
No, too bloody.
Too bloody, too bloody. Okay, next question. If you could go back to 14-year-old Karolina, what would you tell her?
That's not a quick question. But I would say there is this Jordan Peterson quote, and it is focus as much as you can on one thing and see what happens. And I think this is what I would say to her.
On a scale of 1 to 10, this is a silly question. On a scale of 1 to 10, actually, it's not a silly question, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel right now?
I would say 6 today.
Okay. I'm going to pause for a second because I think, I don't know what it is, but in this stage of my life, I really appreciate conversations, and I'm going to keep saying thank you. But I do appreciate your candidness, your openness, your honesty. It's crazy. I wasn't expecting a 6. I'll be honest with you, but thank you for that. I really appreciate that. We're gonna pause rapid fire. I'll just be honest with you.
Okay.
I can't finish rapid fire. I ain't gonna. You're the first person I can't finish rapid fire. What the heck?
Too honest. Sorry.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, and we'll wrap it up with this. Your willingness to share your story is powerful, and I'm gonna keep saying that you got to keep sharing your story. And I wasn't expecting this, but thank you. Like for real, legit, like bra. I'm telling you. I want to encourage you that the more you experiment with things, whatever, document it, write it down. I'm sure you do journaling and
Oh, I actually don't. I should, but I prefer to speak to somebody than like write.
right. I'll tell you that. Okay, I know we're going sideways, but when I used to work out a lot and do my diets and stuff, I used to literally write down the foods that I ate and how I felt eating it. And I would also write down the workouts I did and how it affected my workouts.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something I did. I probably should publish it, make money on it, but yeah, I would encourage you to do that. Write down things and how it makes you feel, and whether it means anything or not. I think it's therapeutic to write stuff down like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think in my case it's mostly mold. My diet is like I eat the same thing 3 times a day, so that
well,
would be a very boring journal.
you could write a book and the title would just be Mold, MOLD. It would be
Yeah.
probably sell millions of copies. Be like, wow, I want to buy that book.
Yeah, so I need to test my flat now. I don't even want to know what I'm gonna find here, but yeah.
So I imagine humidity affects a lot of that, right?
You know what? I'm very good with humidity, so that's funny because I actually love when it's like hot and stuffy. I just can't stand mold, so those two things don't really. But at
Yeah.
the equator, I would do so well there. I always feel so good there. Obviously, when there is mold there, that wouldn't work. But perhaps in like a yurt, or yeah, how do you call that? A yard, like a tent.
Yeah.
I think that could work.
Well, I can't finish rapid fire. I'll get too emotional. Anything you want to say in closing?
Well, I had one more since we already diverged.
Yeah.
There was one thing that you said that I wanted to comment on before. That was when we were speaking about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
So I thought I might as well do it now. So that was about the women who, like the society was telling them, like being a truck driver is not a thing and a man should do it. So I don't think that is true. And I think also what's happening in the Nordics right now is kind of proving that to be the case because they are trying to make this country as egalitarian as possible. And what happened was that less and less women are interested in STEM jobs and not more and more. So I would also say that's mostly, personality driven or evolutionary, like evolution driven.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson would eat up Rachel. You know who Rachel Maddow is?
No.
She's I think she works for MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get political. To me, I don't identify as a conservative or a Democrat or liberal or right wing. I just identify. Look, people say, "Hey, Greg, has your political identity changed since Trump or whoever?" I said, "No, I don't identify with a politician.
Yeah.
This is how it works. The politician identifies with me. If their values don't align with me, they're not getting. I'm not going to vote for them.
Okay.
I don't identify with you. You identify with me. You work for me. I pay taxes. You work for me. So, but
Yeah.
anyways, Rachel Maddow is one of those newscasters who um, was totally opposite of Jordan Peterson, and she made a comment that the pay disparity right between men and women. And so the guy that was on her show said, "That's not quite true, Rachel, because if you're saying that women get 70 cents on the dollar and men get the dollar, what jobs are we talking about? How many hours a week are we talking about?" And traditionally, men work more hours per week than women, and women typically, and this is just in the United States in the study. So the data that she was using was to misconstrue on purpose of really what's going on. And I think we talk about that with Jordan Peterson. I think I would love for him to get a Rachel Maddow show and just lay the smackdown, if you will.
Yeah. It was really good when he was doing those interviews where people were kind of attacking him because he's just so good at handling attacks. It's incredible.
He's transparent too.
Yeah.
Like,
It's honest.
and he starts crying too. I'm like, what the heck? That's real stuff right there.
Yeah. He practices what he preaches, and I think that's why I just like him so much.
I think you have a better opportunity of seeing him than I would because he actually does a lot of visits abroad. Well, he's from Canada, if I'm not
He was
mistaken.
in Warsaw. I did go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should do a show one day where we just talk about that stuff, and we can talk about the other stuff too. But we will get
Sure.
a lot of heat. A lot of people are like, "What are you talking about? You can't."
Yeah, we probably, I do tend to get a lot of heat. Yeah, that's true.
Well, thank you very much. I
Thank
want to
you for
do my
having me.
closing remarks. And so if anybody wants to follow her on social media, this is her user handle. It's Karoarr. How do I say that? Or is it just a word? I mean,
Oh, it's just something I,
it's Karar.
yeah.
It's Karar. Karar. So her username is Karar on IG. That's how you spell it. And I'll do all the promos on social. So Karolina, I want to say my goodbyes, but when the live stream ends, we'll still be in the back
Okay.
office, and I want to say my final goodbyes and just say my thank yous. So
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. Those of you that have been on the live, thank you. On the replay, thank you. Make sure you follow her on all socials, follow her story, and if you want to support her, reach out to her. Disclaimer: she wants to make sure that you're honest and transparent. Don't just start saying all kinds of crazy stuff to her. So it's Kadar on IG. But Karolina, thank you. Appreciate you. And we'll chat in just a minute.
Thank you.
Family, I just want to say I appreciate you hanging out. This is the first time I wasn't able to finish my rapid fire questions. And for whatever reason, I don't know if maybe it's late here for me, but I will say that Karolina was very open and honest and candid. And I really appreciate that. That's why I do these podcasts. I don't do it for any other reason other than to learn and hear stories. And Carolina by far is one of the best storytellers I've had. Not fake storytellers, but real stories, and I appreciate that. So, on behalf of my family out here uh, on this side of the world, thank you for watching. As I always say, family, be sure to repost this, share it out, follow her on socials. Once again, her socials are Karoarr on Instagram. Family, as I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho, aloha, and mahalo. Yes, sir. Chew.